Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Empowering Empathy. I have Mr. Brian Markham here.
Hello, hello.
Thanks again for joining us. Last episode, we talked about Brian's early career and what kind of led him to Golden Technology and how things got started. And today, Brian, we're going to talk about you had kind of a pivotal moment in life. You called it one of those, life-changing events.
Sliding door moments.
And we'll just affectionately call it an opportunity to move on to something
there
new.
You go.
So
there you go.
Why don't you tell us about how that all started?
Yeah, so I really, this weekend I went hiking in the woods, and I was trying to think, like, why are you doing this, Mark? And why are you doing these podcasts? And my hope is that my story can shorten some of the mistakes that other entrepreneurs, people who are maybe starting other IT staffing companies could help, because I really do believe in that. Sure. Because I had some great people to help me along the way, but the mistakes I made, I could have used somebody like, if I could talk to my 30-year-old self, that would be a game changer. So Anyhow, as just a quick recap, I had been a sales manager at a previous company, hired a headhunter to find some salespeople, and realized that I was paying him like $15,000, $16,000 per offer of bringing in a salesperson. So I'm like, man, this dude's sitting at home making $30,000 a month, and I would
opportunity light bulb.
Yeah, and I'm like, I got to get into this game. So early on, Michelle had started the business from our office, from our 700 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment that cost $1,400 a month in
the home office
97. Yeah. And we had gotten it started, and if you guys want to know where Golden came from, we had a child back then, and she was a 75-pound Golden Retriever, and yes. That was our only child. And it's so funny, the tagline, because I used to take her field training, like how to retrieve an egg without breaking an egg in its mouth, and gun training, so where it doesn't go flying off when the shotgun goes off. But the tagline was Golden Resources. We will hunt them down for you.
We will hunt them down.
Yeah, jeez. So it was pretty cheesy.
It's a little aggressive.
Yeah, and I had like a picture of a dog sitting there on the dock, ready to jump in the water, saying, and then the next picture of them like leaping in the water, and then a picture of the dog bringing the pylon back in its mouth, and it was cheesy, man. But in that time, in the 90s, IT headhunting was easy, to be very candid. I went and took a 3-day course on learning IT terminology. So I learned everything about all these different 3-letter acronyms.
There are many.
Yeah. And I started off, and about 3 months into it, we were doing well enough that Michelle was able to quit her job. And so awesome. It was... What I had this green book that had they had the CIO and their 4 top persons in each company in the country and the technologies that they used, and we just dialed and smiled back then. And so I would tell Michelle, you get 2 new open positions for us to work on, and you could be done for the day. And I was doing the recruiting. 2 positions a day, 5 days a week, 10 new requirements. That's plenty for me to work on. Right. And literally by lunchtime, she was done most days. Mm-hmm. Everybody needed IT people back then. Yeah. And I thought I was an arrogant, egotistical narcissist that thought I was going to be the next Bill Gates, the next Larry Ellison. By the way, that's Oracle's guy, if anybody doesn't know who that is. And it was easy. But at that time, we knew we were going to start raising a family. So we decided to move back to the great state of Ohio from San Francisco. And I remember just literally making $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 placements on the 15th of the month, and taking the next week and going golfing for 2 or 3 days. It was too easy. I was too arrogant. So I came home, and what do you do when you're the best in the business, right? You go out and you hire all your friends and your neighbors.
Right.
And you think you're going to be the next .com, you're going to be the next Pixar. So anyhow, we started back up, and I hired 1 close friend and 2 neighbors. and it was my wife and I, and there was 5 of us, and dude, it was Silicon Valley on steroids. It was fun. It was partying. I mean, we literally had a kegerator in the office.
Of course.
Wednesdays and Thursdays. That we were having too much fun. I specifically remember this is a crazy story. We were getting married, and because I was marrying an Orthodox Jewish girl, her Orthodox Jewish parents were not paying for the wedding, so I had to pay for the wedding, and we had bought a house. I had to come up with like $50,000 at 26 years old. I remember in 1 month, I placed a CIO at a hedge fund company and a VP of infrastructure at a company, and made $75,000 that month.
Nice.
And that's what paid for our wedding and paid for our down payment on our house. And so usually ignorance is bliss. And so we grew the business. Everything was going fine. But as we started approaching 9/11, and 9/11 really wasn't the big, 2001 in general was just a crappy recession year.
Yeah.
I remember our top client was slowing down. And like a week before 9/11, I had to let go 2 of the 3 people, and it wasn't pretty. Imagine firing neighbors.
Yeah,
it
rough.
was. It made the neighborhood really toxic, and that's my fault. And I was just trying to prop up the business with credit cards. I pay them salaries. I get a check, pay off the credit cards, pay their salaries, pay out. Run up the credit card, and we were doing that month in and month out, month in and month out.
Just ignoring problems too long and compounding them with other mistakes. Yeah.
I think, as they say, your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. So my greatest strength is I know I can build a business. My greatest weakness is I know I can build a business, or I think I know I can. So I think that I can recreate. I can always be an earner, but life and God, I've learned a new word. I used to call them my sliding door moment. I would call them their crucibles in life. There's moments that you're tested, and this is a huge test. So after having letting go 2 of the 3 people, I flew to our top client in San Francisco on September the 10th, and that was the day before the terrorist attacks.
Right.
And I woke up in my sister's house out there in Pleasanton, California, on September 11th. Because of the 3-hour time change, we had. I was sitting there brushing my teeth at 7 o'clock there, 4 o'clock there. So I didn't have to be in the office till like 11. So I actually watched these planes crash in at my sister's house. And I'm thinking so it was 9 o'clock here, so it was like 6 a.m. there. So after the first couple hours of just catastrophe and just shock and just everybody knows what they felt like that second, right?
Yep.
I drove into the office, to my client's office. And this is kind of a tough time to get through. I walk in that office, and there's nobody there. And I'm thinking, geez, no one's here because we just had a terrorist attack, da-da-da-da-da. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just go back to my sister's house and hang out there and see what to do next. But this operations person came up to me, and she was there, and she walked up. And she didn't like me, to be honest, because she was part of HR trying to find people. So I was doing her job better than her, and I was getting paid a lot more money to do it.
Right.
And I wasn't very good at managing relationships that well back then. So yeah, I walked in, and she walked up to me, and she was very happy to announce to me that they had just outsourced the entire IT department to EDS, Electronic Data Systems. So in a matter of 2 weeks, I fired 2 of my closest friends. I flew the day before the largest terrorist attack in our country's history, watched the planes flash in, and on September the 11th, was fired by our one and only biggest account.
Yeah.
It was
dominoes.
It was absolutely devastating. And so I I can tell you, I've been through the valleys and the high points of life, and those valleys are, I thank God for them today, but I don't ever want to go back to them. So the valley continues because the economy didn't just bounce back after 9/11.
No.
So it took me a week, I don't know, 7 days, 6 days to get back home because all the flights were canceled.
Right.
I couldn't even find, I was going to rent a car. I was going to buy a bunch of books on audio cassette tapes. Yes, audio cassette tapes. And I was just going to listen to books and drive across the country.
Yeah.
But couldn't even find a car rental because all those were gone.
Yeah.
So flew back 5 or 6 days later, got home, and just scrambled. And I just limped along. You know, that next spring and summer was absolutely miserable. I was probably 3 months behind on my mortgage payment. I was getting the nasty grams about potential foreclosing on my home. I had $40,000-$50,000 of credit card debt, and that was a 2 or 3 year period of just hell. And
Right.
And one of the capstones of this crucible moment was a vacation that I had paid for a year and a half earlier. It was one of those ones where we went to the Bahamas, to Paradise Island, but if you bought a vacation in the future, it was half price, but you had to sit through one of those stupid 3-hour MLM, well, not MLM, timeshare.
Timeshare pitch.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I remember the following fall, we had paid for this vacation already. The only thing we had to pay for is our food. We had the airfare paid for. We had the hotel paid for. I think we even had excursions paid for. I just had to pay for my food. Dude, I was so broke, I had to borrow a few $100s from my dad just to go on that vacation.
Yeah.
And that was literally the worst vacation of my life. I remember walking through, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the Atlantis. This hotel's sick. It is like Michael Jordan rents out the top floor. It is one of the nicest places in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
And I remember walking through the hallways in the lobby of this place going, I'm not gonna say it, but you are such an effing poser. Like,
well, you feel handcuffed. You're in this amazing place, and you found your way there, but it's almost like you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, but like, who do you think you are? Like, yeah, you it's just, you know, you're pretending to be somebody that you're not, and so I and oh, by the way, we had a baby at home that Grandma and Grandpa were watching, and we were pregnant with our second one. I think that was the case. Yes. So our first trip, we were pregnant with our first one. Second trip, we were pregnant with our second one. So we had a baby at home. So I had this huge amounts of responsibility on my hand. And about day 3 or 4, Michelle went up to bed, and I went outside. And I specifically remember walking out on a pier, and I was like snot bubble, crying, having a screaming match with God. And I was so ignorant. I was so dumb. I remember and I sat there for a brief second because I had just, thank God, signed up for a $400,000 life insurance policy a year earlier for my wife and kids. And I remember thinking, Markham, you're worth more jumping over top of this railing than you are to your family, than you are if you walk back to that hotel room. And I didn't do one of those moments like the like the Titanic where I got up on a ledge and slipped down, but I sat there for a long hour and just really contemplated it. And I first thought, man, I'm going to survive this fall, and then I'm going to be in a hospital. I'm not going to be dead. I need to find something that's going to take me fast, because this is not going to be fast.
Yeah.
That's as close to being suicidal as I've ever been, or hopefully I will ever be. But that fight with God defined who I am. I came back home. Um, Dug out of debt, spent a year and a half in a 2-bedroom little tiny apartment, sold my house, and in 2 years was completely debt free and working. And spent the next 10 years or so, maybe not that long, 7, 8 years, learning what I did wrong,
Mm-hmm.
learning what I did right, and and just focused on being a good dad, and focused on being a good husband, and focused being on a good Christian, and just trying to figure. Trust me, man. They say there's no atheist in foxholes. I was in a foxhole, man, and so I had lost golden resources at the time. It was done. It was dead. It was dead under a doornail. I fired all the friends. We had no friends left in Columbus because I fired all of them. Our neighborhood, we were definitely the outcasts in the neighborhood. One of the wives of the other guys came at my wife one night, one day when she was dropping something off at her house, just screaming at my wife, and it wasn't my wife's fault. It was
Right.
my fault.
Right.
And like, I put my wife through that, put my kids through that. So, yeah, I learned that I learned what matters in life. I took a financial management class. I learned about being a good steward of money. And so that's the hard lesson that I learned. Spent the next 7, 8 years and moved into something. I moved to Cincinnati because I felt like an outcast. We felt like an outcast in Columbus. Went to go work for an office, an MRI office here in Cincinnati, and dug ourselves out. And by the time I ended my employee position, before we started Golden back up, I was a VP of delivery and recruiting and sales, excuse me. And we had 250 people underneath us doing project-based work. And so in a 7 or 8 year period, I went from a foreclosed house, 4 credit cards, paying a freaking $800 a month for a Porsche Boxster and I got stuck in that lease. I couldn't get out of it.
Right.
To where we were living, the suburbial Liberty Township lifestyle in a 7, 8 year period. I was the VP of sales, and I had a great job. So I've been tremendously blessed over those 7, 8 years, but I also learned a lot of things. So there you go. That is what we call Golden Resources, Golden Technology 1.0.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
So a couple follow-up questions.
sure.
Obviously, there's something that was deep down inside you that you found in those dark moments, and something that you picked up that helped you over the next 7 or 8 years to really dig in and fight and find your way back to where you wanted to be, where you are now. What is that thing?
Well, you guys asked, like, got me. No, obviously.
Because I think to a certain
when you
degree,
see a
everybody's
child,
been somewhere.
This sounds ridiculous. When you see a child come into this world, and you're like, "Holy cow, that's mine!" Like, that looks like me. Like the miracle, they call it a miracle birth.
Yeah.
When you see that, you're like, your game changes on you, and
Mm-hmm.
you have 2 of those, and so you now are not living for yourself anymore. And so I would say that's a huge element of it. The second element, obviously, is I had a lot of people around me that loved me. I had parents that supported me. I had sisters that supported me. I had friends still, even though I alienated that neighborhood. But I had friends around.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is I knew there was something bigger than me out there that was taking care of me. I felt it. I mean, I felt this hand over top of me and underneath me. And what I realized, if we were taking a little lesson, I guess, is, and I've said this in other podcasts, is I was living for myself. I was living a selfish, just life. And I thought, the world owed me everything, and it's just getting as many dollars as you can in the bank to go spend it and have fun. And so family, wife, kids, huge one, faith in God, and family and friends. There you go. That's what got me through.
I've heard you say it before. It's not all about you.
No, it's not. It's not anything about you. I married into a Jewish family, so I was the goy of the family. That's the Gentile, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So goy, GOI. I took that acronym and made it my own. GOI stands for in this order: God, others, yourself. If you can put yourself in that order, then life actually makes serving others is what makes my life a lot of fun now. But I learned the hard way, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect spot to then segue. We'll move on to the next episode here, and we'll hear more about the rebirth of Golden, or Golden Technology 2.0.
Yes, it is. I'm think we're gonna bring in a special guest for this one.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. We're gonna get on out of here at the moment, but stay tuned for the next episode, and we will be on to Golden Technology 2.0. So we'll see you next time.